Every marriage is a sacred union between two people who have different personalities and backgrounds and different sets of expectations about what the relationship is going to be. I'm John Fuller, and my wife Dina and I have been married almost 40 years, and we've had frictions, we've had moments of kind of cold silence, and we've had some really good moments along the way. Your marriage might be affected by any number of dynamics, and we want to talk about something that Focus on the Family does, Hope Restored, a 4-day marriage intensive that offers hope to couples. These are intensives that are facilitated by counselors, and it can be a life-changing, generational impact kind of experience for you if you participate in Hope Restored. I'm joined in the studio by Mark and Lena and Courtney. They field phone calls with questions and interests about Hope Restored, and we're going to unpack what Hope Restored is and what you can expect when you reach out to Focus on the Family. We want to help your marriage thrive in Christ, and these three people are committed. They're part of a team that's committed to making sure that we connect you with the right resources. And Hope Restored is a terrific resource. Dina and I have been the beneficiaries of a time at one of the intensives. Let's start with the person who's here. They're interested. They're not sure. Like, first of all, an intensive. I mean, that sounds pretty daunting. Mm-hmm. So what is an intensive?
The word itself, I think you're right. When you hear intensive, you think bright lights, tough questions, short time to answer. But an intensive is really a lot of marriage counseling in a short period of time. Our 4-day intensive takes place, as you would guess, over 4 days. There's 8 hours each day. Counselors know exactly how to keep everybody fresh during that time. Mm-hmm. So that it's kind of an intensive period of counseling. It's not so much the spotlights.
Okay. So is that a question that you would typically get kind of when somebody calls you? What is this thing?
It is. Most of the time it's, we Googled for counseling, and we found your program. Can you tell me about it? So immediately there, we start off by sharing what to expect when they come to an intensive, letting them know, that it is going to be that word intensive. Mm-hmm. It is going to be intense. They are going to receive counseling from the counselors there that is going to draw emotions, going to draw just a lot of information in this short period of time.
And Courtney, can you think of somebody who's called in and said, whoa, I'm not sure?
I think a lot of people might be hesitant because they're in that crisis mode or at an impasse in their marriage where they're just against the wall. They don't know what else to do. People will go to the Hope Restored website and go, okay, this is exactly what we need. Maybe weekly counseling, although great, maybe is not working for them at that time. And so they need something like an intensive. Mm-hmm. So, when people call in, they're going, I think I know what the intensive is. And it's really our job to make sure everybody's on the same page, to make an informed decision if Hope Restored is exactly what they're looking for and the right fit for them. Mm-hmm.
And while Hope Restored started as a ministry in Branson, Missouri, we have got a number of locations. We're growing as we try to reach so many people in so many different parts of the country. So, Mark, you don't have to travel all the way across the country to go to one of these.
Definitely not.
And each of these properties is unique. They kind of feel like sacred places. I've been to a couple of these, and it feels like there's a Holy Spirit kind of envelope around these places.
My wife and I got to go to a getaway in Branson, and truly goosebumps just even thinking back to it. Stepping on the property there, it's amazing. And then when you see the hospitality staff and the counselors, it's like looking into the Lord's eyes. At least the way I picture it.
There's a great work that takes place at these locations.
Yes.
There's demand. In fact, there's typically a wait time. There's a kind of an ebb and flow to the wait times. What's a window of waiting from the time I call to the time I actually can participate in a Hope Restored?
Well, John, depending on time of year and location, scheduling out we're between 3 and about 6 weeks before the next opening is available.
Mm-hmm. There's a key question that I know is asked somewhere in the process of the Hope Restored registration process. It has to do with, do you believe God can intervene? Unpack that. What is the question exactly, and what are the responses you get when people call in?
There's one question we're going to ask all the couples who register, and it's, if God were to perform a miracle, would you be willing to accept it? We want them to just realize that if they come in there and they think all hope is lost, that God is good all of the time. And if they just allow him to work, that there's an opportunity for a miracle to happen, and we just want them to be open to it. I think it's the most important question we probably ask. There's a lot of questions that we do a lot of the heavy lifting, so to speak, up front. When they call in to do their interviews, we want to get a good idea of where they're at their marriage, what's bringing them to the intensive. And that is the miracle question. Just, are you open to it?
Yeah.
And we're looking for a yes. We want them to know that there is hope, no matter how dire their marriage is at.
How common is it for your caller to say, I think I can accept that, I would like that, but I don't think my spouse is open to it?
Super common.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably more often than not. There's an openness, but nobody's going to bet a nickel on their spouse being in a spot where it's actually going to work. There are some where you've got a husband and a wife where they're both like, we need help, we want it, we want to turn this boat around quickly. It's very common, though, for one spouse to think, I'm not sure he or she is interested in going, and I don't know if they'll try.
My experience has been that sometimes they'll ask, well, what do you mean by that question? And so we have to explain it to them. We just want them to come just with an open heart to receive what God can do. Now, the program is great. The counseling staff is great, but there's a component of faith. There's a component that what God is going to do. So are you open to that? And so I think that's important when we ask that question, because sometimes, like Mark said, they are, well, I am, but I don't know about my husband.
How often do you encounter a caller who found Hope Restored through a search, and so they really don't know Focus, they don't know us, they're not sure that 4 days is really going to be worth it? How do you diffuse some of those concerns or address some of those?
I think a key thing that the counselors themselves, I've heard them say, is that it takes a long time for us to get our marriage into a spot where there's clear and ongoing challenges. That doesn't happen overnight, and it does not get typically entirely fixed in a 4-day period. It's really what's taking place here. Perfectly named ministry in my mind is Hope Restored. The hope has been brought back in. God says in his word how important hope is to our bodies, our overall health, our bones, and having that in the mix and then being able to go back home after that with a good toolbox of items that you can select from to keep your marriage going the right direction, get it going the right direction, and then tapping in oftentimes with a mentor couple back home, local counseling. Once that ship has been stabilized, now we're in a good spot, we can go back home and keep up the work.
Yeah, I like how you're putting that. So what are the most common reasons that you have somebody calling in? I mean, why are they looking for help for their marriage?
Yeah. I find like even though you have the bigger issues, what it comes down to, what people relate to is there's a breakdown in communication and the conflict resolution isn't complete or it's not healthy. Yeah.
Well, that was the case for us. We weren't divorce-minded, but I talked to somebody at Hope Restored, and I said, look, I'm discussing Hope Restored on our broadcasts. It'd be nice if I could go see what it's like. And then I said, plus it's been like a long season of parenting and some special needs parenting has really just got us to a place of kind of a detente, if you will. It's not the marriage we want. And so I said, can I participate? And the answer was yes. And when Dina and I went, it was a safe place to find some tools that helped us get out of the cycle of cold relationships, of shut down communication, of hurt feelings. To this day, I mean, this has been years later now, we still use those tools on a regular basis because it's so helpful.
I love that.
Just to find that spot where I'm not your enemy. Let's figure out what this problem is. It's the stress, it's the strain, it's the lack of time, it's the lack of wonderful time together, just relaxing. There's so many different reasons that a couple can get to a bad spot. There are big things that happen, and we want to recognize that. I don't think you've been surprised by anything over the years. There's no condition that's uncommon, if you will.
That's pretty true. And John, I think what you just said there as far as once we've been married, whether it's 15, 20, or 30 years, there's so much time demands on the wife, on the husband, and raising the kids and the different things that go on. It's easy to not have as much time together. It's easy to not intentionally live separate lives, but
You kind of drift there. Yeah.
that, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's how we described it in that introductory session. Is we're just at a spot where it's hard right now.
I like what you said. You said you weren't in the divorce mindset. And I think a lot of people who call maybe are heading towards that direction. And I think it's really important for people to hear this, that you don't have to be, that's not even on the table.
Right.
It's not an option. People still come to us for the reasons that you attended too. Like they just see it and they want more. There's a lot who come in, their divorce is going to be finalized in a couple days and they've agreed to stop it. As long as they agree to stop it and come here and keep this door open, that there's still hope, that's great. Other people are just like, maybe they're not in crisis, but they've just hit a wall, like at an impasse. So, and I also get this question a lot. Well, I'm 70 years old and we've been married 50 years. Maybe it's a little too late. I'm like, nope. We've had people call in their early 20s, married maybe 6 months, and they see it and they want to stop it. And we've had everything in between. It does not matter your age, how long you've been married. Yeah. It's great.
Well, I want to encourage our viewers to take that to heart because, again, 35 plus years of marriage and parenting, most of that time we were pretty dry and it was pretty cold. But after we went through the program and started using the tools, 2 of our kids said, wow, we've seen a difference. And so there's generational impact here. If you're willing to step into it, there's some real life-changing opportunities here for you, for your family. So what are some of the other common questions you get, and are there scholarships?
We do offer scholarship for our group intensives, and we explain to them what they need to submit in order to see if they do qualify for an intensive scholarship. But yes, I think once they hear everything that is involved.
Well, and that includes world-class hospitality. It includes typically 2 counselors in the group session, right?
Correct.
Right.
The counseling hours. There's assessments we do beforehand.
Assessments.
The lodging accommodations are all included.
What I love is the aftercare program. Is they do become equipped from the counselors with what they need to carry on in their marriage, but our counselors crafted this program for the couples to take home and practice with each other, implementing them, keeping up that momentum. And they get usually two aftercare
calls,
coaching calls that are going to help them stand that path.
That helps with the data dump that occurs during those 4 days. There's a lot there. You walk away with resources and follow-up calls to make sure you're able to kind of exercise those. Now, how about people who call in and say, well, we've done Christian counseling and it hasn't worked, so why would this be any different?
We do hear that
Do you?
often.
Okay.
Often. And the key thing that an intensive does that is different, or one of the key things, is that with the weekly counseling, we find ourselves going in to see the counselor 45, 50 minutes, maybe an hour, and then jump right back into everyday life, which is challenging and whirlwind, as we all know, and we can take a few steps forward during the counseling visit, and we don't know exactly how many backwards during the week, and then we find ourselves back in the office again. With the intensive, it gives you a chance to have momentum where you're building upon not just the previous session, but everything that's taken place in the morning, in the afternoon, the previous days. So it's giving that jump start, again, not solving every problem in a 4-day period, but a jump start so that the hope is returned to the marriage. Husband and wife can look at each other when they leave Hope Restored. They have an option of writing in a journal that is in each room. Everything's kept confidential there. But they get to write some stories in there that are amazing. And they come in hopeless, and they leave oftentimes fully in love, like lovebirds again.
Well, there are obviously a lot of changes that can occur during a time at Hope Restored. My own experience was that we had time to just do what you were saying, Mark, to concentrate on the relationship. We didn't We didn't have the kids. We didn't have the concerns. We were there to work on the relationship, and God showed up in some pretty cool ways. So what kinds of things do you remember seeing in journals? What kinds of encouragement do people leave once they've been in the program?
I think the overall consensus that I've found is that they were so angry with each other when they got there, shut off. They might even have that nonverbal communication where they're sitting away from each other, backs turned towards
Arms crossed.
yeah,
yes.
arms crossed. And then there's something that happens, I think the third or fourth day, usually on average, where there's like a breakthrough. And you can see it in the changes of their demeanor. They're willing to kind of open up more. So yeah, they, like Lena said, it's like they really, and Mark too, sorry, they leave with a lot of hope. They see that it's possible once they get those walls down.
We receive those calls. We're at the front end, in a sense, and we listen to everything that they're going through, and we hear the desperation. They're desperate many times when they're calling. But when we get to listen or read some of those stories in those journals, it's refreshing to us because we get to hear the backside of when they arrived. Most of the times they put in those journals, we were mad at each other, we did not like each other, we were just so unhappy. And then when we read their stories, or read some of their stories to us, it gives us, you are doing something for the kingdom, and to hear what God has done in their life, it's so refreshing on our end because we don't get to hear it too often.
Yeah, you catch a lot of the pent-up emotion and the frustration, don't
In
you?
the back, yeah.
Now, I heard one of you before we started talking about prayer. I would assume you kind of have to pray up before you start your day and get calls from couples who are angry at each other or apathetic about the relationship. How important is that spiritual dynamic to the work that you do?
I think big time. I pray typically at my desk once I get to work, and I find out Lena gets a head start on it.
I do.
Yeah.
I drive to work and I tell the Lord, I don't know who's going to call today, but you do. And you have every person assigned to who's going to answer. And so I just say, Lord, you give me the words. You know who's calling, who's going to be on the other line. Give me the words to offer hope, and just let me be Jesus to them over the phone.
Yeah, that's good. What do you say to the person who's still on the fence? Either they've watched this or they've read or they've talked to somebody and they're thinking, well, maybe, but I just don't know.
I ask them to pray about it. Number one, I encourage them to call as many times as they need to, that they're never bothering us.
Okay, so this isn't a sales pitch. When they call, they're not going to get a sales pitch.
Never. And I encourage them too. I'm like, we don't earn anything off of this. We're here to help. And we truly care about the individual and the marriage. We're not pushy. We have nothing to get from this except to help them thrive. And so I want you guys to make an informed decision. I want you to feel good about this. And so encourage your spouse to call. I'd love to be able to talk to them. Sometimes it's easier to hear it from us. Sometimes that wall is up and they won't listen to their spouse. So, I'm like, I'm sure you would do a good job, but have your spouse call in. They might have their own questions. They might need to feel more comfortable about the program. And you continue to pray for the program too, and see if this is right.
So the couple decides it's right for us. What does that registration process entail? Because it's obviously going to have some questions, and there are going to be some forms. There are going to be some things that we have to do.
There are, and it goes start to finish. It's designed for a 24-hour period. From the time the spouse calls up and says, we'd like to sign up for this date, it starts off with about a 12 to 15-minute phone conversation with that spouse, done confidentially, privately.
That's important. Let's hit that because there is a level of confidentiality here that is important.
Oh, absolutely. The things that are shared, say, with myself when the wife calls in on the opening conversation, none of that gets shared with the husband when he calls in later in the day to conduct his 15-minute call.
This is a safe process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so there's that 15-minute call, and then what?
There's some policy forms we have them sign, just giving them a good idea of the expectations and the guidelines for focus of what they can expect, that it's going to have clinical counselors. They are licensed. They have their education, either a master's or PhD level, but it is going to be Christian approach to their clinical therapy.
Can we address that real quick? Because that is one of the signatures of the program is there's a biblical perspective
Absolutely.
on the marriage relationship, on the foundation of the family that the marriage is. What is that distinctive for us? Why is that so important?
Well, it's important because a lot of people have gone to secular counseling and they can feel the difference and they want that Christian approach in their marriage. They know how important it is to have Christ as a center for them as an individual and as their marriage in order to thrive, to be equally yoked. I think a lot of people are, well, my spouse isn't a believer. Is this going to work? Are they going to be welcome? What does that look like?
And what are your answers to those questions?
We accept everyone. We aren't. Everybody's at a different walk in their faith, and they're not going to have any kind of scripture, judged or have scripture make them feel shame or to blame for anything. Like you said, it's a very vulnerable environment where we want them to feel open and safe, and so we respect that people are at different areas of their faith and different walks.
And we do tell them, we're not here to judge you. I think when they make those initial phone calls, they do feel, because of where they're at and what is bringing them to an intensive, they do feel, well, I don't want to share or I don't want to talk about certain situations. But that's important. We are biblically founded program, but we're not going to make you feel uncomfortable. We're not going to judge. We're not going to make you believe the way we do. And so I think once that is expressed to them, they let that guard down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's important.
Any particular stories that come to mind? You said you get a chance sometimes to read these journals. Have you ever had somebody call you back and say thanks? You have?
Yes.
Oh, tell me.
So I registered a couple, I think probably about a year and a half ago. The interviews were very, I guess, what you could call smooth sailing. Like there were, we talked about what was bringing them to the intensive. Both the husband and wife were very transparent and thought, okay, this is going to be a go. They're going to attend. About a week before the intensive, the wife calls me very distraught, hysterical. And she goes, I don't think I can go. He's not going to listen. I don't want to disrespect him. And I don't know if I can talk about what I need to. I think it'll make it worse. And we're already at such a bad point. So I talked to her what she can expect. We prayed together. And I reminded her, you're fighting an enemy. The enemy is at work. You would be shocked about how often we hear people call in between time or want to cancel. And I said, anytime you're going to a godly place to get godly support to restore a marriage, the enemy is on the prowl. He hates this. So when I register people, I always tell them, have your guard up. Be ready for this because you're going to get some spiritual warfare above and beyond. And so they went to the intensive. And I'd say about 4 to 6 months later, I get a call from her saying that it went great, that they are thriving, that her counselors were fantastic, that she was able to be guided in a way that she felt safe to still talk about what she needed to get resolution and to have that kind of throw it out on the table, I suppose, what they needed to.
Yeah.
And the counselors were great at guiding them.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And there is kind of a brutal honesty you get to that you need to if you've been playing games or you haven't been totally truthful with each other. That's a great story, Courtney. And I hope that gives you encouragement to contact us today. If you're waffling, be courageous. Call and talk to one of these three or their teammates. Get somebody who's caring, who considers this a ministry opportunity to you. We want to help you, and that begins with a phone call. So contact us and let us know if we can be of help. Maybe we haven't answered your question. Post it in the comments or call and ask. I don't think they'll be surprised. They would love to be able to talk to you. We're here as a ministry. Focus on the Family is here as a ministry to help you in your marriage. That's the foundation for Hope Restored. And if we can be of service, it would be a privilege for us to take your call and to get you lined up for one of the locations. On behalf of everybody that calls, thank you, Mark and Lena and Courtney, for your hearts, for your service to the kingdom through what you do, and may many, many more couples and families generationally be impacted because of your faithful work. So thanks for joining me today.
It's our pleasure.
And thank you for watching and for interacting with us and for praying for this team as they field calls. And again, just let me reinforce this. Focus is here to help you and your marriage thrive. So if you are in a spot and you need help, call us, please.